Good evening, everybody. Welcome. We chant that so slowly, so you can really notice what you're chanting. The prompt we don't do a lot of tuneful chanting, although there is some, but we certainly encourage everybody to, when you do chant, to do it wholeheartedly. Put your whole self into it, don't hold back. You don't have to be quiet and polite about what you emit when chanting, but just really feel the reverberation in the body as you chant. So this weekend we gathered for a meeting of the Tao Ren, which is a study group for anyone who's received the 16 Bodhisattva precepts. And we study more deeply the various, endless practically, outpourings of words about the Dharma. After we're very, very well rooted in Zazen, our own direct wordless practice, so that the words that come along can be useful rather than adding to the confusion. It's always the challenge in Dharma talks, and so I hope my talk doesn't add to your confusion. Maybe there will just be something that gets clear from it. The thing about Dharma is it's only useful when it's your own clarity that comes forth from the practice, right? So you don't need to, don't need to take any precepts in order to practice with us. First of all, I just want to make that very clear. If you find that this is an agreeable setting for practice and it's supportive, you just keep coming, and then you might decide to become a member and support the Zen Center in that way with your presence, your practice, and also financially. But then you also may decide to receive the first 5 precepts, which are universally given in the Buddhist community all around the world. And then if you keep going, you might want to receive the 16 precepts after you've done some retreat practice and really feel the Dharma unfolding in a very lively way in your own life. So you're very clear, yeah, this is a path. This is my native path. So we're all potentially a bunch of natives here. This practice is, we can get hooked on it. It's very simple, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. And what makes it difficult is our habits of mind. As we continue to practice, we realize that Zazen, along with precepts and studying, is a way to approach our wholeness as human beings and to open into our wholeness. Getting beyond the narrowing mind and the habituating mind and the mind of automatic, being on automatic and kind of in a reactive state. The mind that is incessantly chattering and commenting and narrating. We are all, so to approach our wholeness, even though we are all initially from the very beginning quite whole, but we don't necessarily experience ourselves that way. Instead, we go around feeling that we're not complete. Maybe feeling like my life really hasn't gotten started yet, even if we're in our 50s and 60s. And we're not complete. This isn't the way I imagined my life to be. And there continues to be a feeling of a mismatch between the wholeness and the full internal experience and how we show up in the world. So how do we become more real and full and holy ourselves? That's what we come into through this practice when we stick with it. It's not an instant pill by any means. It's very thorough, which means it takes time. It's an evolutionary process. So the Tao Ren has been studying Dogen Zenji's text, the Bendawa. Everybody was pronouncing it differently, but I think it's pronounced Bendawa by Dogen. And that's a very careful and detailed laying out of Zazen, of the life of Zazen, the treasure that Zazen is, the treasure trove, how to truly practice Zazen, and therefore truly learn how to live into our lives with gusto, holding nothing back. He says, our practice is perfect in each moment, yet we have a direction toward Buddha. And that's a lovely, simple way of talking about the practice of Zazen, which is what we call meditation, Zazen. But it's not simply meditation, it's a particular, Zazen is this moment. Uchiyama, who comments on the Bendawa, said, a bodhisattva is an ordinary person who has a direction toward Buddha. That's encouraging, huh? That qualifies all of us, anyone. We're all ordinary people. And so is Siddhartha Gautama, or Shakyamuni Buddha. He awoke to the essential nature of life and embodied it in his very ordinary life as it unfolded as a member of society 2,600 years ago in North India. So all of the cultural forms that he expressed this full life through were particular to that time and place. Our particulars are specific to 2022 U.S. particulars. So, what can we realize? What is our realization? What is yours? What are you realizing? How do you relate to that term, realization? The cultural forms that we live into are very specific, but the essential nature of these particulars of ours is just the same process that Shakyamuni Buddha discovered and articulated. And the articulation has continued to be modernized and run through a number of different cultures until it comes in translation to us. So we have the essential nature to uncover in Zazen, having a direction toward Buddha, toward the questions of what is essential nature, what does that refer to? I can use any number of words about that, and you can be sure I will, but it doesn't make any difference unless it's something that you really, the word lately the word is endorse in your own experience. Right here, as we sit here with our own experience, practicing, not knowing what we'll find in each moment. And that's true in Zazen. We don't know what we'll find in each moment. We don't necessarily know what we'll find in each moment, but it's very possible to sit and do Zazen for a long time and kind of know what you're going to find, like, oh no, why have I come? Oh, the same old thoughts. How do I stop my thoughts? And then you go off into them, right? But actually, when you relax, you get tired of it. You give up, and just be here. You don't actually know what you'll find in each moment. having a direction toward Buddha means embodying a certain attitude towards our experience. Involvement is mental, that's for sure, in that I'm aware and conscious, so it's mental, but also it's physical, because the body is the necessary condition for awareness. And the attitude that I hold about my conditioning rests on how open I am to the flow, how minutely I'm really present and kind of with it. With all of this impermanence, we'll notice that the mind changes moment by moment by moment, and sometimes it's because of your internal process, thoughts coming and going, sensations, commentary. Sometimes it's outer, that pop that we heard. What did that lead to? I thought, oh, I hope that's not my tire. I don't know why it would be my tire, but that was the thought that came right there. It's like, bam, right there. So, and yet, that was just a thought, came and it went. Now it's a memory, and I've said it, and so now it's in your minds. So, how much do you appreciate your thoughts? And what your thoughts select, and the effect of them? What do you notice what's going on? What do you make of it? How do you respond to it? So what are thoughts? Thoughts, we don't always choose our thoughts. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we just really go down a path and we really follow it actively because it's interesting and we're caught. But sometimes you can be going along and just following your breath, and then all of a sudden a thought will pop up. Where does it come from? You didn't choose it, it's just there. So all of this, we watch what's going on in the mind. And often people will say, my mind is much more busy since I began to meditate. And that's the impression, because you may not have noticed what was going on in your mind before. So, Zazen is sitting in the fundamental ground of being. This is a typical Zen kind of sentence. So what does this mean, the fundamental ground of being? Sitting in the fundamental ground of being. Is that an instruction that you know how to pursue? If Zazen is the fundamental ground, then we're always in it. If something is fundamental, it's part and parcel of everything. And this very material is our fundament. So Zazen is sitting in our fundament, noticing it, making room, inviting, setting up the circumstances to take a look at what the basics are in the mind stream, how it operates, what fills it up. But if it is our fundamental mind, then why do we need to practice? The Dharma refers to how things are, no matter what form things take, whether it's material, such as a chair or a structure, or if it's immaterial, like a thought or an impulse or a sensation. One of the things that's true is that all forms change. This process is fundamental to everything. Looking at Zazen in this light can help us clarify what the Zen approach is all about. Our ordinary mind is a cacophony. Cacophony, wonderful word. Of infinite details and musterings and habitual promptings, emotions. We can go on and on describing all of the various kinds of things that flow through. All of us sitting in Zazen confront this situation, this cacophony. It can be really loud and demand our attention, command our attention while we're sitting on the seat And we can wonder how we can undertake to do zazen in the midst of all this inner commotion. This monkey mind that hoots and jumps from tree to tree, thought to thought. And yet this very same mind is the mind of Buddha. This very mind that we share with Shakyamuni Buddha. Somebody asked my first teacher, Robert Aitken, they said, I just can't sit, my mind is so busy. I'm not like you're supposed to be if you're going to do this practice. And he said, you're struggling with this because you have the very same mind as Shakyamuni Buddha. And when I heard that, this was early in my Zen career, when I heard that, I felt two things. One is, that was an incredibly mystical statement that he made. Wow, I have the same mind. I went into kind of the dream state, you know, or the archetypal language, poetic state, on the one hand. And on the other hand, I felt really relieved, because this man who was obviously very, very calm, confident, kind, was assuring me that Shakyamuni Buddha also struggled with his mind. It's very, and I believed him. I believed him, because he seemed to embody that same confidence. Zazen is really paradoxical, and it's very contradictory. To see and then not to get caught by what we see. To hear and not get caught up in what we hear. To have thoughts and not be caught by them. It's a very mysterious thing. This awareness that is fundamental. It's very large. All kinds of things can be going on within it without noticing. But it can be done, and this is done through Zazen. People often have the idea of Zazen, think of a form of a person sitting in meditation, and in fact, that sitting posture is just the doing of Zazen in a greenhouse. That is the form, the posture of it, but it isn't the essence of it. Doing things thoroughly, throwing yourselves into whatever you're doing, which we call throwing yourself away, without thinking about what you're doing, is what Zazen means. Both in stillness on the seat and in activity. Throwing yourself away means wholehearted engagement. That self-consciousness that can constantly be there is not there, and you are just what you're doing. And everybody in here, I'm sure, has had that experience, and we call it having fun. Playing music, riding your bike, hiking, taking a bath, dancing, cooking, etc. Where you're not self-conscious, you're completely engaged. Not thinking about. So how do we do Zazen without thinking about doing Zazen? And I think I've mentioned this, some of you have heard me say this before, but I just think of the first time I ever sat down in the Sangha. This was in Washington, Seattle. And I sat there and I didn't know what to do. So I kind of looked around at everybody. The whole time I was just like looking at what they were doing, thinking they were completely, you know, when people were sitting like, and I thought, oh wow, are they enlightened? Are they enlightened? Oh boy. So then I pretended to be the same way. Well, the closest thing that we can come to getting away from this self-consciousness is, and what the Buddha taught about it, is science in our culture. Buddhism is a phenomenological system. is very practical. It's very rooted in just this, what this is, right here and now. Accurate observation, not judging and choosing and preferring and rejecting, but just observing is part of it. It's very practical. And within, we're looking within the context of cause and effect. There is no such thing in this context as an absolute I, me, my, I, ego, me. Just as science is teaching that there is no absolute universe that we can find in some shape or form that is always the same, not changing, not interreacting. There's also no absolute universe that we can find as an I, as a self in Zazen. Even though we refer to ourselves that way, one of the first really interesting practices is to say, find the self. What is the self? You know, it's not the body, and it is. It's not the mind, and it is. Always changing, but specifically, what is it? Describe it. That's one of the interesting things about keeping a diary. You're always describing. What you're doing is you're narrating. You're narrating your life, but you also may be making very specific observations. So nothing is permanent. No subject. We are always subject to impermanence and interdependent arising. We're always affected by our surroundings, our relationships, and vice versa. We're always affecting everything around us. The self that we are living, the self that we practice with, is subject to what all forms are subject to. When we quiet the mind and calm the system, so that wholeness is caught up, our wholeness is caught up in activity, is no longer caught up in our activity, the view clears. Sitting in Zazen, when we really, we say, follow the breath. And when you really do just follow the breath, you get so simple that you just, the breath. It's just not even following, nobody's following the breath. The breath is just breathing. Things are very, very open and clear. And slowly, slowly we can see, our sights get very much cleared up. And until we get to that stillness, internal stillness and attunement and awareness, we are dependent on an idea, on a concept, on what others are saying. Like me right now, which maybe is helpful, maybe not. Talking about how it is, but that's all hearsay. Somebody else telling you, even the Buddha telling you, is hearsay until you know it for yourself. Directly, in the inmost registration of what is. So we hear tell of liberation from suffering, but it is a rumor until we discover this open field in our own heart. When clarity begins to function, that's when our clarity begins to function. That's when we have access to native wisdom. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom is seeing things as they are, their true nature. And when it functions, we can respond really well, really appropriately to whatever is going on. But when we become self-conscious in Zazen, then we hesitate. And we do that in anything when we become self-conscious, because we separate from whatever it is we're doing. And things are unable to flow. We stop the natural flow. We interrupt it. We interfere with it. So to be able to move forward without being self-consciously aware of what we are doing is where we're going in Zazen. To be able to sit there and actually just sit. Just sit and breathe and be present. It sounds very simple and not very, I mean, I heard that for so long and I thought, oh, it's got to be more than that. That doesn't sound very inspiring. What do you think? So, whenever we are just moving forward without being self-conscious, without summoning the self, then we are thoroughly activity or stillness, and we call that deep samadhi. People wonder, what is samadhi? It's when we're just this. It's not referring to a mystical anything other than what we are directly experiencing, completely absorbed in, one with, mind and body doing the same thing. When we're able to relax deeply and forget the self and forget the project of awakening. You know, so often we approach this as another project. So we get here and then we sit down and we really like start. You know, it can feel like a project. So when we let go of it as a project, we can discover a release that we had forgotten all about. When we're able to know that quiet, still, direct, and unconceptual experience, then our true wisdom, our pure wisdom can come forward. And the experience is often described as, oh, I remember this, because there usually was a time where before we created a whole narrative, we just directly experienced. Wisdom we are born with, fundamentally, always present, but before practice we may not notice or be able to allow it to function in our activity. Before relaxing into deep stillness for ourselves, the Dharma teachings remain conceptual. But as soon as we completely allow relaxation to be thorough, our Dharma eye, we glimpse the true meaning of the emptiness, what that is referring to. Empty of whatever we usually put into it, meaning, reaction, significance. We call this emptiness. We could also call it fullness, because there's almost a feeling of fullness in deep, silent, quiet, inner quiet. Without the self doing anything. That's a great relief. That is a great relief. We do not have to do anything for the world to continue to unfold. And then it becomes only a matter of whether in every single moment we're functioning from this awakened mind or not. We're not functioning from it. When we're functioning from awakened mind, any action we take in the world can be of use. And there's a lot to do in the human world, in the relative world, in the world of suffering beings. There's a lot of trouble in Dodge. But if we don't have, if we're not connected with the source of awakened mind, we just add to the reactivity in the world. Just our own complaints, our own aversions, fears. And also in ourselves. So, it's not just a one-off process. You don't just like awake and then it's all permanent. Beauty of Dogen's teaching is he talks about it is an ongoing, continual process, moment by moment. Any moment, you can have a very open Dharma eye and be very aware and then forget and get caught and lost. And then, that's one of the beauties of having a center and a sangha, is when you come back, we can help each other stay connected with what is most essential, with our widest view. Dogen, there's a phrase in this book that says, discriminating mind does not reach life. I think that's a beautiful way to describe the conceptual mind, which is very useful. It can be terrifically elegant, and you can really go far with it. But it is not what is the direct experience. So as a human being, because we are capable of direct, it's a shame not to know it, because it is vast, and there's immeasurable energy available through this mind that is unfettered, unbound by concepts. Practicing Zazen in an upright posture is the true gate to awakening to what is real. Although this Dharma is abundantly inherent in each person, he says, it is not manifested without practice. It is not attained without realization. Realization. So when we're practicing Zazen, we are practicing being real, unhindered. That's why it's really important to learn how to really relax. And you may discover, you may feel very relaxed, but you may discover as you go along, and this can often happen in retreat where you have extended periods of meditation, that things relax in your body that you didn't even know were tense. And you can realize things about your life that you never even noticed before. But when you got quiet enough, you realize, wow, I didn't realize that, blah, blah, fill in the blanks, there's so much to see about ourselves. Dogen describes that what happens is when our Dharma eye is more open, we are accepted and used in the practice of enlightenment. And we are pulled and turned in the practice of enlightenment. And that really captures this sense that it's not just us, that this whole process of awakening is the way to be a whole human being. And when we begin, we are helped in all kinds of ways. We're supported in this awakening in so many different ways. And some of the ways that we're supported is big trouble comes along in our life. It's paradoxical. But if we're around the Dharma, we say, well, how do I practice with this? And that's a really good question. But you have some tools, right? But the other way that we are pulled and turned, we are accepted and used, is the mind opens and we do realize things, and we are given back portions of ourselves, disowned parts that we thought were out there, and we realize, oh no, that was my thing. I was putting that on. No wonder they were so pissed off at me. That was my thing I was putting on them. There's so many forms of this that really begin to we shed. So we notice everything that comes up in body and mind. we really get tuned into our thoughts and our wishes and our dreams and our fantasies, just the quality of all of those memories, agendas, all of it chugs through like a little train, you know. There's a lot of stress added by the variety of thoughts that we are attached to, that we don't need to be, that we don't need in order to function quite beautifully in our lives. But we don't know that, and we can't discern that unless we have a refuge in quiet mind that becomes more and more readily available when we practice. So I think I've been talking long enough. I won't keep going. May we all persist in this practice and take it up and learn how to trust our own path and see it, discern it as we go along, as we are led, as we're turned in this wheel of awakening. May we all realize that for ourselves and become confident and trust the practice, trust the direction of turning in the direction of Buddha.
Please turn to page 5.